Daniel wiped the sweat off his brow as he adjusted the control panel on the water filtration system. The colony on Taros 7 had only been established a year ago, and there was still much work to be done. Humans had spread far across the stars, building settlements on habitable worlds, and this one was no different. But today, something unexpected happened. A faint rustling in the tall grass nearby caught his attention. He turned, expecting to see one of the colony workers, but instead, his eyes met an unfamiliar figure. A woman, tall and slender, stood at the edge of the clearing. Her pale blue skin shimmered under the twin suns, and her deep violet eyes held a mixture of fear and determination. Her dark, silken hair was braided down her back, and she wore a simple cloth wrapped around her body. But what caught Daniel's attention most was the small child standing behind her, clutching her leg tightly. Daniel instinctively placed his hand near his utility belt, where his communicator was clipped. Daniel led Lyra and her son through the colony's outskirts, his mind racing with questions. The settlement was still small, mostly made up of prefab buildings and open fields where crops were beginning to grow. A few workers glanced at them as they passed, their eyes lingering on the unfamiliar alien woman and child, but no one said anything. He brought them to his living quarters, a simple one-story structure with a metal roof and a reinforced door. Inside, it was plain but comfortable. A small table sat in the corner, a few chairs, and a cot pushed against the far wall. Daniel wasn't a man of luxury. He spent most of his time working outside. Lyra and Orin stepped inside hesitantly. The boy's wide violet eyes scanned the room, taking in every detail, while Lyra remained still, waiting for Daniel to speak. "Sit down," Daniel said, pulling out a chair for her. She nodded and sat, her posture still tense. Orin, however, remained standing close to his mother, gripping the edge of her clothing. Daniel leaned against the table, arms crossed. "All right, tell me everything." Lyra took a slow breath before speaking. "My people, the Surith, once thrived on this planet. We had cities, technology, a peaceful way of life. Then, the war came." Daniel frowned. He had heard only fragments of this history, mostly from old reports. "Who attacked you?" Lyra's eyes darkened. "Our own kind." Daniel's brows furrowed. "A civil war." She nodded. "A powerful faction rose among us, believing that our way of life had made us weak. They wanted to return to an age of strength, where only the strongest ruled. They destroyed everything that did not fit their vision, including those who resisted." Daniel glanced at Orin. "And your husband, was he?" Lyra lowered her gaze. "He was taken in the early days. I do not know if he still lives." Silence filled the room. Daniel exhaled slowly. The Surith weren't the first species to fall to war and chaos, but that didn't make it any easier to hear. Lyra continued. "After the war, the survivors scattered. Some fled to other planets. Others, like me, tried to hide. But for a woman alone with a child, life is difficult." Daniel remembered what she had said earlier. The strong take what they want, and the weak suffer. He understood now. "You came here because you think humans can protect you," he said. Lyra met his gaze. "Yes, humans are different from other species. You build, you create, you value fairness. I have seen it. That is why I came." Daniel rubbed his jaw. "And that's why you offered yourself as a concubine." Lyra nodded. "In my culture, it is a way for a woman to find protection and stability. But I see now that humans do not follow such traditions." She glanced at Orin. "I will not ask again. I only ask that you help us survive." Daniel studied her. She wasn't trying to manipulate him. She wasn't asking for pity. She was simply a mother trying to protect her child. He looked at Orin, who had remained silent the entire time. The boy was clearly wary of him, but there was no hatred in his eyes, only uncertainty. Daniel sighed. "I'm not the kind of man who takes people in without thinking, but I also don't turn away those who need help." Lyra remained still, waiting. Finally, Daniel nodded. You can stay for now. I'll figure something out. Relief flickered across Lyra's face, but she quickly masked it. Orin, however, took a small step closer to his mother, as if reassured. There are rules here, Daniel said. You'll need to contribute. Food, work, something. Lyra nodded. I understand. I will not be a burden. Daniel pushed away from the table. All right. I'll talk to the Colony Council and see what they say. Lyra stood, bowing her head slightly. Thank you, Daniel. Orin hesitated, then mimicked his mother's motion. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. He had a feeling this was only the beginning. Daniel woke up early, just as the twin suns of Taros 7 began to rise. The air was cool, and the colony was quiet. He stepped out of his small house, stretching his arms. Today would be busy. He had to speak with the Colony Council about Lyra and Orin, but first, he needed to make sure they settled in. Inside, Lyra was already awake, sitting near the small cooking unit. She had found the food supplies he had left for her and was preparing a simple meal. Orin sat beside her, nibbling on a piece of fruit. The boy still looked wary of Daniel, his violet eyes watching every movement. Morning, Daniel said. Lyra nodded. Good morning. Orin didn't say anything. Daniel grabbed a water bottle and took a sip before sitting across from them. I need to speak with the Colony Council today. They'll decide if you can stay permanently. Lyra nodded again. I understand. Daniel glanced at Orin. I'll also have to figure out what to do with him. Lyra stiffened. What do you mean? Daniel shrugged. He's a kid. He needs to learn, same as the human children here. We have a small school in the colony. He should join. Orin tensed, gripping his mother's arm. His expression was unreadable, but Daniel could see fear in his eyes. Lyra hesitated. Orin has never been around humans. It may be difficult for him. Daniel sighed. I get that, but if you're staying here, he has to learn our ways. He can't just hide. Orin finally spoke, his voice quiet but firm. I do not trust humans. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Why's that? The boy didn't answer. Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder, speaking softly. Orin was raised with stories of the war. He has seen things no child should see. Many of our people blamed outsiders for what happened to us, even though humans were not involved. The fear remains. Daniel leaned back in his chair. Well, we're not like the ones who hurt your people, and you'll have to figure that out sooner or later. Orin didn't respond, looking away. Daniel exhaled. He wasn't great with kids, but he wasn't going to let the boy live in fear of something that wasn't true. You know what? Daniel said, standing up. Come with me. Orin looked up, confused. Where? Daniel grinned. You'll see. Lyra hesitated but finally nodded. Go, Orin. It will be fine. The boy seemed uncertain but followed Daniel outside. The colony was starting to wake up now, workers heading to their tasks, machines humming in the distance. Daniel led Orin to a large open field behind the housing area. Several human children were playing there, kicking a small ball back and forth. This is where the kids come to play, Daniel said. Go join them. Orin stiffened. No. Daniel smirked. Scared. Orin's eyes narrowed. I am not scared. Then prove it, Daniel said, stepping back. Go on. Just watch if you want. Orin hesitated, then slowly walked toward the field. The human children noticed him immediately, their expressions curious but not unfriendly. One of the older boys, Alex, smiled. Hey, want to play? Orin didn't answer. He just stared at the ball. Alex shrugged and kicked it toward him. The ball rolled to Orin's feet. He glanced at Daniel, who nodded encouragingly. Orin hesitated a moment longer, then, almost reluctantly, he kicked the ball back. The game continued, and little by little, Orin joined in. Daniel watched from a distance, a small smile on his face. Maybe, just maybe, the boy would start to see that not all humans were bad. Daniel sat in the colony's main hall, waiting for the council to gather. The room was simple, with metal walls and a large table in the center. It wasn't anything fancy, but it was where important decisions were made. Lyra and Orin's future depended on this meeting. The doors opened, and 3 members of the council entered. There was Captain Reynolds, the head of the colony's security, Dr. Mason, the chief scientist, and Ellen Carter, the settlement's administrator. All of them had been on Taros 7 since the beginning. They knew the risks of taking in outsiders. Captain Reynolds was the first to speak. "You found an alien woman and her child near the colony." Daniel nodded. "Yes. They came to me asking for help." Dr. Mason leaned forward. "What do we know about her people?" "Not much," Daniel admitted. "The Serith lived here before humans arrived, but their civilization was destroyed by war. Lyra and her son are survivors." Ellen Carter folded her arms. "And what does she want?" Daniel hesitated, then sighed. At first, she asked to be taken in as a concubine. Reynolds raised an eyebrow. "A concubine?" Daniel nodded. "It's a survival tradition in her culture, but I told her that's not how things work here. She understands now. She just wants a safe place for her son." Dr. Mason tapped her fingers on the table. "And you believe she poses no threat?" Daniel shook his head. "She's just a mother trying to protect her kid. That's all." Carter exhaled. "We have rules, Daniel. We can't just take in anyone." "I know," Daniel said. "That's why I'm here. I want to find a way to make it work." The council members exchanged glances. Finally, Captain Reynolds spoke. "There's one way." Daniel leaned forward. "I'm listening." "You take responsibility for them," Reynolds said. "If they cause any problems, it falls on you." Daniel sat back, considering the weight of those words. It was a big decision. If something went wrong, the colony would hold him accountable. But as he thought about Lyra's tired eyes and Orin's quiet fear, he knew he couldn't just walk away. "I'll do it," Daniel said. Carter nodded. "Then it's settled. They can stay." Back at home, when Daniel returned, he found Lyra sitting outside, watching the children play. Orin was still on the field, kicking the ball with Alex and the others. Lyra stood as Daniel approached. "The council?" she asked. Daniel nodded. "You can stay, but under one condition. I'm responsible for you. If anything goes wrong, it's on me." Lyra lowered her head. "I understand. Thank you, Daniel." Daniel sighed. "You don't have to thank me. Just try to make this work." Lyra looked toward Orin. "I will." As Daniel watched Orin laugh for the first time, he realized that, whether he liked it or not, his life had just changed forever. The days passed quickly in the colony. Lyra and Orin were no longer outsiders, but they were not fully accepted yet. Some of the colonists treated them with curiosity, while others remained distant. Daniel knew it would take time, but at least they were safe. Lyra had taken on work in the community kitchen, helping prepare meals. It wasn't a difficult job, but it allowed her to contribute. Meanwhile, Orin had started attending the small school run by a retired teacher named Mrs. Holloway. Daniel wasn't sure how the boy would adjust, but he made it a habit to check in every day. One afternoon, he stopped by the schoolhouse, a small building near the colony center. Peering inside, he saw Orin sitting in the back, arms crossed, staring at the floor while the other children read from their tablets. Mrs. Holloway, an older woman with sharp eyes and a kind smile, noticed Daniel and walked over. "He's a bright boy," she whispered, "but he refuses to participate." Daniel sighed. "Not surprising. He's still getting used to everything." Mrs. Holloway nodded. "I'll give him time, but he needs to try." Daniel walked over to Orin's desk and crouched down beside him. "Hey kid, how's it going?" Orin didn't look up. "I don't belong here." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Says who?" Orin's fingers tightened around the edge of his desk. I don't understand their words, their stories, the way they think. Daniel thought for a moment, then pulled out a small data pad from his pocket. He tapped the screen, bringing up a map of Taros 7. See this? This planet used to belong to your people. Now humans live here too. But we're not enemies, Orin. We're just different. Orin finally looked up, his violet eyes filled with doubt. But different people do not live together. Daniel smiled. Sure they do. That's how humans work. We mix with others, learn from them, and build something new. You can be part of that, if you choose to. Orin hesitated. And if I do not? Daniel shrugged. Then you'll always be alone. For a long moment, Orin said nothing. Then, slowly, he nodded. I will try. Daniel patted his shoulder. That's all I ask. An unseen shadow. That night, after dinner, Daniel stepped outside for fresh air. The colony was quiet, the twin moons casting a pale glow over the settlement. Lyra stood near the edge of the housing area, gazing up at the sky. You okay? Daniel asked, walking over. She nodded. Orin told me what you said today. Thank you. Daniel shrugged. He's a smart kid. He just needs time. Lyra turned to him, her violet eyes searching his face. You are different from the others. Daniel smirked. You keep saying that. Because it is true. She hesitated. Among my people, trust is not given easily. You have done more for us than I expected. Daniel scratched the back of his neck, suddenly feeling awkward. Well, Before he could finish, a rustling sound came from the trees beyond the colony's boundary. Both he and Lyra turned, their senses alert. What was that? Lyra whispered. Daniel narrowed his eyes. The security sensors should have detected any movement, yet there had been no alarms. He reached for the communicator on his belt. I don't know, he said, but I intend to find out. Something was out there, watching. And Daniel had a feeling it wasn't friendly. Daniel's hand hovered over his communicator as he scanned the dark tree line beyond the colony's boundary. The rustling had stopped, but the feeling of being watched remained. Lyra stood beside him, her body tense, her violet eyes fixed on the shadows. The colony was surrounded by thick vegetation, remnants of the old serif forests. Most of the wildlife had long adapted to human presence and stayed away. But something, or someone, was out there. Daniel pressed the communicator button. Security, this is Daniel. Do we have any movement on the perimeter sensors? A crackle of static followed, then a voice. Negatived, Daniel. All sensors are clear. Daniel frowned. That wasn't possible. He had definitely heard something. Lyra took a step forward. It could be one of my kind. Daniel turned to her. You think someone followed you here? She hesitated. Not followed, but there are others like me. Survivors. Some hide deep in the wildlands. If they saw me come here, they may be watching. Daniel exhaled. All right. Stay here. He moved forward cautiously, his boots making almost no sound against the dirt. His hand rested near the pulse pistol on his belt, not because he wanted to fight, but because he wasn't taking chances. He stopped just before the tree line. I know someone's there, he called out. Show yourself. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. Then, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was a serif man, taller than Daniel, with dark markings along his pale skin. His sharp features were half hidden beneath a hood made of woven plant fibers. His eyes, the same shade of violet as Lyra's, locked onto Daniel with suspicion. Daniel kept his stance relaxed but ready. You've been watching us. The man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he shifted his gaze to Lyra, who had stepped forward. Lyra, the man said at last. His voice was deep and rough, like someone who had spent too long in the wild. Lyra's breath caught. Rael. Daniel looked between them. You know him. Lyra nodded. He was a friend, before the war. Rael studied her. I did not expect to find you here, living among humans. His eyes flickered toward Daniel. You trust them. Lyra straightened. This man saved me. He saved my son. Rael's expression darkened. You should not be here, Lyra. It is not safe. Daniel frowned. What do you mean? Rael turned his gaze back to him. The ones who destroyed our world, they have not forgotten us. They are still searching for survivors. Daniel's jaw tightened. And you think they'll come here? Rael hesitated. They will come wherever there is something left to take. A cold feeling settled in Daniel's chest. If what Rael said was true, then Lyra and Orin weren't just refugees. They were targets. Lyra stepped closer to Rael. If they come, we will fight. Rael shook his head. You do not understand. The ones who hunt us, they are stronger now. They have ships, weapons. They do not fight fair. Daniel clenched his fists. He had seen what war could do. He had left Earth to escape it, to build something better. But now, trouble had found him again. Rael took a step back. I came to warn you. If you stay here, be ready. Then, without another word, he disappeared back into the trees. Lyra let out a slow breath. He was always like that. He comes, he warns, and then he leaves. Daniel exhaled sharply. Well, he just made my job a whole lot harder. Lyra turned to him. What will you do? Daniel looked at the colony, at the people inside who had no idea what danger might be coming. We prepare, he said, because if a fight was coming, he wasn't going to let this colony fall. Daniel barely slept that night. Rael's warning echoed in his mind. If enemies were coming, they needed to be ready. The colony was peaceful, but it wasn't defenseless. They had security walls, motion sensors, and a few trained guards, but against a real attack, that was another story. By sunrise, Daniel had already called for a meeting with the colony's leaders. In the main hall, Captain Reynolds, Ellen Carter, and Dr. Mason sat around the long table. Lyra stood beside Daniel, her face calm but serious. Daniel wasted no time. We have a problem. Reynolds crossed his arms. You're talking about the alien you saw last night. Daniel nodded. His name is Rael. He's a Sirius survivor. He warned us that the people who destroyed their civilization are still looking for them. And if they find us sheltering Lyra and Orin, they might come here. Dr. Mason frowned. And do you believe him? Daniel looked at Lyra. I think he's telling the truth. Lyra nodded. The ones who attacked my world, they never left. They took our cities, our lands. They will not stop until the last of my kind is gone. Ellen Carter sighed. This colony was built for farming and research, not war. We have basic defenses, but nothing strong enough for a real invasion. Captain Reynolds leaned forward. Then we strengthen what we have. Daniel agreed. Exactly. We don't know when, or if. They'll come, but we can't sit and do nothing. Carter hesitated. And if they do come, what happens then? Daniel's expression hardened. Then we make sure this colony survives. Training for survival. Over the next few days, the colony transformed. Security patrols doubled. Engineers reinforced the walls. Motion sensors were upgraded, and old emergency weapons were checked and repaired. Daniel took charge of training a small defense team. Most of the colonists had never held a weapon, but they were willing to learn. One afternoon, he stood in an open training area with a group of volunteers. Lyra watched from the sidelines as Daniel handed out pulse rifles to a few colonists. This isn't Earth, Daniel told them. Out here, we don't have an army to protect us. If trouble comes, we handle it ourselves. A young man named Jonah raised his hand. You think these people are really dangerous? Daniel met his gaze. They wiped out a whole civilization. I don't plan to let that happen here. The group nodded, understanding the seriousness of the situation. Daniel turned to Lyra. You should train too. She tilted her head. I have fought before. Daniel handed her a rifle. Then Shoni. Lyra took the weapon, adjusting her grip. Without hesitation, she aimed at a target in the distance and fired. The pulse shot hit dead center. The colonists stared in surprise. Daniel smirked. "All right, I believe you." Lyra lowered the weapon. "The ones who come will not hesitate. Neither should we." Daniel couldn't argue with that. A child's fear. Later that evening, Daniel walked to his house, exhausted but satisfied with the day's progress. As he reached the door, he noticed Orin sitting on the steps, staring at the sky. Daniel sat beside him. Couldn't sleep. Orin shook his head. "I heard what you said today. About fighting." Daniel sighed. "You're worried." Orin looked down. "I do not want to lose my mother." Daniel placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "That's why we're preparing, to make sure nothing happens to her, or to you." Orin's violet eyes met his. "Do you think we can win?" Daniel hesitated. "I don't know, but I do know one thing. We won't give up." Orin was silent for a moment, then nodded. Daniel ruffled the boy's hair. "Now, get some sleep. We'll need all the strength we can get." As Orin went inside, Daniel remained on the steps, looking out at the dark sky. Somewhere out there, enemies were watching. And soon, they would come. The air in the colony was heavy with tension. Every colonist could feel it, the sense that something was coming. Patrols moved along the perimeter walls. Engineers worked late into the night, and the newly formed defense team practiced every day. Daniel stood on the watchtower, scanning the horizon. The twin moons of Taros 7 cast a pale glow over the landscape, but all was quiet. Too quiet. Lyra climbed up the tower to stand beside him. "They will come soon." Daniel nodded. "I know." She looked at him. "Are you ready?" Daniel exhaled. "As ready as I can be." Suddenly, a sharp beep came from his communicator. It was the colony's sensor system. Unidentified ship detected. Daniel's stomach tightened. "They're here." A shadow in the sky. Moments later, a dark shape appeared in the sky, moving fast. It was unlike any human vessel, sleek, black, and almost silent. It hovered above the colony, casting a massive shadow over the settlement. The colony's alarms blared. People rushed to their assigned positions. The defense team grabbed their weapons. Daniel grabbed his communicator. "Captain Reynolds, get everyone inside the secure zones. We don't fire unless they do first." "Understood," Reynolds responded. The ship didn't land. Instead, a deep, distorted voice echoed through the colony speakers, hacking into their system. "You have something that belongs to us." Daniel's grip tightened. He knew what they meant, Lyra and Orin. Lyra's face remained calm, but he could see the fear in her eyes. "They will not leave without us." Daniel shook his head. "They're not taking you." The ship lowered slightly. A section of its hull opened, and figures stepped out, hovering just above the ground. They wore dark armor with glowing red visors, their weapons humming with energy. The leader spoke. "Give us the survivors, and we will spare your people." Daniel stepped forward, his voice steady. "We don't trade lives here." The leader tilted his head. "Then you will all die." The enemy raised their weapons. And then the battle began. The fight for survival. Energy blasts erupted across the colony. Daniel dove behind cover, firing back. The colony's defense team responded quickly, holding their ground. The air was filled with flashing lights and the sound of weapons discharging. Lyra moved like a shadow, her rifle steady. She took down 2 enemies in quick succession, her aim perfect. Captain Reynolds and his team defended the main hall, making sure civilians stayed safe. But the attackers were strong. Their armor absorbed most shots, and their weapons were powerful. One of them broke through the defense line, charging toward the shelter where the children were hiding. Daniel saw him too late. Orin stood frozen in fear as the armored enemy raised his weapon toward him. "No!" Lyra shouted. A sudden blur of motion. Rael appeared from the shadows, striking the enemy down with a blade. Daniel blinked in surprise. Rael. Rael didn't answer. Instead, he turned to Lyra. Get the boy out of here. Lyra grabbed Orin's hand and ran. Daniel and Rael stood back to back, facing the remaining enemies. Rael smirked. Looks like you needed me after all. Daniel chuckled, firing his rifle. Don't get cocky. The battle raged on, the fate of the colony hanging in the balance. And Daniel knew this was their moment to stand or fall. The colony burned with flashes of energy blasts, explosions shaking the ground. Daniel gritted his teeth as he ducked behind a metal crate, his pulse rifle humming in his hands. The enemy forces were relentless, pushing forward with their advanced weapons and armor. Rael crouched beside him, gripping his blade tightly. They won't stop. Not until we force them to. Daniel wiped sweat from his brow. Then we don't let them have a choice. Nearby, Lyra and Orin were sheltered behind a wall, the boy trembling in fear. Lyra clutched his hand, her sharp eyes scanning the battlefield. Stay here, she told Orin, no matter what happens. Orin nodded, his small fingers tightening around hers. A plan of desperation. Captain Reynolds' voice came through Daniel's communicator. We're losing ground. If we don't do something fast, they'll overrun us. Daniel glanced at the enemy ship hovering above the colony. That was the key. If they could take it down, the attackers would lose their advantage. I have an idea, Daniel said, but it's risky. Reynolds responded quickly. At this point, I'll take any chance we get. Daniel turned to Rael and Lyra. We need to disable their ship. If we can get inside, we can shut it down. Rael smirked. I like the way you think. Lyra nodded. I'll cover you. Daniel took a deep breath, then signaled his team. We're moving toward the ship. Cover us. Blaster fire erupted as the colony defenders provided cover, forcing the enemy to take defensive positions. Daniel, Rael, and Lyra sprinted through the chaos, dodging energy blasts as they closed in on the hovering ship. A ramp extended from the craft, and 2 armored guards stood in their path. Rael moved first, his blade flashing as he struck down one guard. Lyra fired a perfect shot, taking out the second. Daniel rushed up the ramp. Let's end this. Turning the tide. Inside the ship, the lights flickered as alarms blared. The control room was ahead, guarded by 2 more enemies. Daniel took cover. We need to take them out fast. Rael smirked. Leave it to me. Before Daniel could react, Rael vanished into the shadows. Moments later, the guards dropped to the ground, taken out before they could raise an alarm. Daniel hurried to the control panel. His fingers flew across the interface, trying to override the ship's systems. Can you do it? Lyra asked. Daniel grinned. I grew up fixing old Earth tech. This is easy. With a final keystroke, the ship's power shut down. The hum of its engines died, and the red lights on the enemy soldiers' armor flickered and went dark. Outside, the invading forces hesitated, their advantage suddenly gone. The colony fighters seized the moment, pushing back with everything they had. Captain Reynolds' voice came through the communicator. Whatever you did, it worked. They're retreating. Daniel exhaled in relief. Let's make sure they never come back. Victory and hope. As the last of the enemy forces flooded into the forests, the colony stood victorious. Fires burned, buildings were damaged, but the people had survived. Daniel, Lyra, and Rael exited the ship, stepping onto the battlefield. Orin ran to his mother, throwing his arms around her. You're safe. Lyra held him close, tears in her eyes. Yes, my son, we are safe. Captain Reynolds approached Daniel, clapping a hand on his shoulder. You did good. Daniel smiled, exhaustion finally catching up to him. We all did. Rael crossed his arms. They will come again. Daniel nodded. Then we'll be ready. Lyra looked up at the sky. Maybe it's time we stop running. Maybe it's time to fight back. Daniel looked at the people around him, the humans and the Sirius survivors, standing together. "We'll do more than survive," he said. "We'll build something better." As the sun rose over the battered colony, one thing was clear. This was just the beginning.